The colony of Rigas lay at the edge of alien-controlled space, a fragile human settlement that had survived only by bending to the will of their conquerors. For generations, the people of Rigas had lived under the shadow of the Ketheri, an ancient alien empire whose demands were clear and cruel. Once every decade, a sacrifice must be made to the fire. A human life, burned alive in the great ceremonial pyre built at the center of the colony square. They called it the Ember Tribute. Without it, the Ketheri whispered through their envoys, the colony would be erased. This year, the tribute was different. The Ketheri themselves had chosen the girl. Not the council, not the lottery that had once determined the victim, but the aliens, their cold eyes scanning the crowd before pointing to a single name. Her name was Leora. She was 17, barely past childhood, with long dark hair and eyes that carried stubborn light. She had never bowed easily, never whispered prayers to alien gods the way others did. Her mother wept when the Ketheri chose her, and her father stood in stunned silence, rage boiling but helpless under the soldiers' rifles. The decree was absolute. The day of the ceremony came with a heavy silence. The pyre had been rebuilt, taller than ever, its wood soaked with alien oils that shimmered an unnatural green. Colonists gathered, their faces pale, their eyes fixed anywhere but on the girl who was led forward in chains. Some wept quietly, others whispered bitter prayers, and a few turned their gaze skyward to the looming alien ships that floated in orbit above, a reminder that refusal meant extinction. The Ketheri envoy, a tall, skeletal being wrapped in silver armor, raised his voice. The fire cleanses. The fire binds. The fire feeds the pact. His alien tongue twisted, but the translator implant made the words cold and clear. He gestured to Leora. She is the chosen ember. Through her, your colony survives another cycle. Leora's chains were unlocked, and she was pushed toward the pyre. Her knees scraped against the stone steps as she climbed, the crowd silent, every breath held. She felt the heat before the flames touched her, the green fire crackling unnaturally, hungry, almost alive. Her heart pounded. She wanted to run, to scream, to fight, but there was nowhere to go. She stood at the edge of the pyre, staring into the fire that had consumed so many before her. Her mother's sobs reached her ears, muffled by the thick silence of the colony. Her father's voice did not rise, but his fists were clenched, trembling. The Ketheri raised their hands, chanting in their strange tongue. The crowd was ordered to kneel, and then the soldiers shoved her into the flames. The fire swallowed her. Pain exploded through her body, searing every nerve, every bone. She screamed, her voice raw, echoing off the walls of the colony square. People covered their ears. Her mother fainted, but the scream did not die. It grew. The flames wrapped around her like living cloth, devouring the oils, but her skin did not blacken. Her flesh did not melt. Instead, the fire clung to her, glowing brighter, shifting from green to gold. Her hair lifted in the heat, her eyes blazing as though molten light had poured into them. She stood in the center of the pyre, screaming, but not in agony now. Her voice had become something else, something that carried power. The fire obeyed her, twisting and rising higher, forming shapes in the air. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The chains that had bound her melted like wax, dripping harmlessly into the fire below. The flames no longer consumed her. They followed her, moving with her heartbeat, glowing brighter with every breath. And then it happened. Above, in the cold sky, the alien ships halted. Their engines flickered, their weapons powered down as though struck by an unseen hand. Silence fell heavier than before, broken only by the crackle of golden fire around the girl. The envoy stumbled backward, its skeletal form shuddering. For the first time, the Ketheri showed fear. She lives, someone whispered in the crowd. The flame has chosen her. Another voice said, trembling with awe. Leora looked down at her hands, now glowing with embers that did not burn. Her scream faded into ragged breaths. She should have been dead. She knew this. Everyone knew this. But instead, she stood taller, wrapped in living fire that bent to her will. The envoy tried to speak, but its voice faltered. This is forbidden. The ember is ours. But its words were drowned out by the murmurs of the colonists, whispers rising into a chant. Chosen, chosen. Leora's father rose to his feet, tears in his eyes. For the first time in his life, under alien rule, he shouted aloud, "No more chains. No more fire." The Kethari soldiers raised their rifles, but the flames surged as if hearing the words. The weapons melted in their hands, dripping slag to the ground. Panic spread among the aliens. Leora stepped forward, the fire parting beneath her bare feet. She stared at the envoy, her voice hoarse but steady. "I was meant to burn, but the fire doesn't want me gone. It wants me alive." The envoy hissed, retreating. "Impossible. You are human. You cannot hold the ember." Leora's gaze hardened. She could feel it now. The fire was not just heat. It was alive, ancient, waiting. It had chosen her. And through her scream, it had spoken to both human and alien alike. Above, the alien ships remained frozen, powerless against whatever had awakened inside the girl. The colonists no longer bowed. They stood, wide-eyed, caught between terror and hope. Leora raised her hand, flames dancing around her fingers, and for the first time in living memory, humanity looked at the fire, not as death, not as submission, but as something that might finally burn for them. And in that moment, whispers spread through the colony like wildfire. She is not the sacrifice. She is the flame. The demand came through the skies like a thunderclap that was not made of sound but of authority itself. The alien overlords broadcasted across every channel, their voices neither male nor female, neither kind nor cruel, yet carrying the unbearable weight of inevitability. They did not ask. They did not beg. They declared, "Deliver her. Deliver the one you call child, the one who burns without burning. She is ours. She is the lost ember. She belongs to us." The words sank into the colonists like hooks, twisting through flesh and spirit alike. For generations, humanity had lived beneath the cold dominion of these beings, enduring taxes of grain and metal, enduring laws written in languages they were never meant to read, enduring punishments that were meant to remind them of their smallness. But this was different. The aliens had never called for a single human soul with such urgency. Never before had they revealed prophecy. Never before had they admitted that humans could matter to them. The settlement erupted with whispers. Some spoke of doom, others of deliverance. And at the center of it all stood the girl. Her name was not shouted. Her name was whispered, as if even the wind might carry it back to ears that had no right to hear it. She walked among her people with shoulders hunched, but her shadow stretched long, too long, as though the fire inside her refused to be contained by mortal skin. When she touched the failing solar grid, the panels hummed awake with a warmth no engineer could explain. When she knelt by a bleeding farmer, her palm pressed to his wound, the blood slowed, clotted, healed as though time itself bent at her command. Children followed her at a distance, not daring to reach out, but unable to look away, their wide eyes reflecting the shimmer that sometimes pulsed faintly from her skin. The elders spoke of miracles, of the ancient stories whispered before the invaders came, stories of humanity's hidden power, stories the aliens had forbidden. Some fell to their knees when she passed, whispering prayers they had not dared to speak in decades. But she felt none of the holiness they poured upon her. In her chest there was only fear, knotted and raw. She remembered the moment of the fire, when the pyre had been meant to consume her, when her body had been meant to turn to ash. She remembered the crowd's gasps as the flames bent around her like a lover's embrace instead of an executioner's wrath. She remembered the silence that followed, the silence that was more terrifying than screams. Now, every look she received was a question she could not answer. Was she human at all? Or was she truly what the aliens claimed? A piece of them, lost and now found? The alien voice returned the next night, but this time it was not broadcast to all. It came to her alone. She had been lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling of the hut, when a whisper threaded into her thoughts. Not sound, not language as she knew it. It was older, deeper, sliding through her mind like a river through stone. Child of Ember, lost flame, come to us. You are not theirs. You are ours. With us you will be whole. With us, your power will not break you. The whisper curled around her heart like smoke, filling her with an aching pull, a strange yearning she hated and feared. She clutched her chest as though to dig it out. But another voice, human and desperate, called her back. Her mother's voice, though her mother had died years ago. Or was it only her memory, refusing to fade? You are mine, her mother used to say when holding her as a child. You are mine, and I will not let them take you. At dawn, the council gathered in the broken hall where cracked windows let in the bitter wind. Arguments rang out like blades striking shields. Some demanded she be given over. Better one life than many, they said. Better peace through surrender than war through defiance. Others shouted that she was proof humanity could resist. Proof that the alien yoke was not eternal. With her, they said systems revived, crops grew stronger, wounds healed. With her, they could rise again. The girl stood in the corner, hands trembling, listening to people fight over her as though she were a weapon to be wielded, a trophy to be displayed. Her chest burned with a heat she could not control, and the table cracked where her palm pressed against it, wood splitting as if under invisible fire. Silence fell, eyes turned to her, and she realized no one saw her anymore. They saw only what they wanted her to be. That night, the alien ships descended lower than they had in years, their black hulls blotting out the stars. The ground quaked under their thrumming engines. From the sky came a promise wrapped in threat. Come willingly, and we will end the harvests, and the punishments, and the chains. Resist, and we will turn your rivers to dust, and your homes to cinder. Choose quickly. The ultimatum hung in the air like the last breath before execution. She sat alone, staring at her hands glowing faintly in the dark. For the first time, she realized the energy pulsing within her was not silent. It whispered, faint and broken, like an echo of countless voices layered over one another. She pressed her hands to her ears, but the voices remained. One of them, low, insistent, spoke words that chilled her marrow. They are not lying. You are theirs. But another voice, buried deep, thundered back. No, you are ours. You are human. You are more than both. The girl gasped, caught between two hungers that were not her own, torn in half by forces too vast to comprehend. Outside, the colonists knelt in prayer while others sharpened their blades for war. Above, the alien ships waited with patience that promised violence. Inside her chest, the fires surged higher, hotter, threatening to consume not just her, but everything around her. She clutched her knees to her chest, rocking as if to hold herself together. Yet in the corner of the room, in the shadows that should have been empty, she felt a presence, a shape tall and watching, and a voice that spoke not in command, not in prophecy, but in something terrifyingly tender. You burn because I remember you. The first fracture came quietly, like hairline cracks in frozen glass. A handful of colonists slipped away during the night, carrying their children, their food, their secrets. By dawn, the girl's name had been carved into the dirt outside the hall. Surrender her, or we all die. At first the council tried to erase the words, but more appeared the next morning, etched into walls, burned into wood. Rumors spread faster than hunger. Some whispered she was a miracle, others hissed she was a curse. Mothers clutched their sons and prayed she would save them. Fathers sharpened their knives and muttered that she would doom them all. The girl walked among them, feeling the weight of every gaze. No one looked at her as a child anymore. She was a flame given flesh, and they feared to touch her. When she pressed her palm against a broken plow, the metal straightened, reshaped itself under her trembling hand. When she cupped her fingers around a sickly flower, it bloomed. But when she brushed her fingers against the stone wall of her own home, it blackened and cracked. Her power was a gift, a curse, a thing neither she nor anyone else could control. That night, the fire called to her again. She sat before the dying embers in the hearth, hugging her knees, when the last spark flared brighter. It rose, taller than the wood that fed it, curling into shapes her eyes could not hold. A voice slipped through the flame, soft as breath, fierce as steel. You were never meant to be consumed. You were meant to burn brighter than their darkest fear. The girl's heart clenched. It was not the alien voice that had haunted her before, commanding, demanding. This voice was older, and it was something like love. She leaned forward, whispering back, though she knew no one was there. "Who are you?" The flame shimmered, dancing higher, and for an instant she saw the outline of a woman. Hair like fire, eyes like suns. But the vision shattered as footsteps echoed outside. The council had gathered again, but the hall was no longer filled with arguments. It was filled with accusations. A merchant had been caught with alien coin in his pocket. A guard confessed to sending signals to the orbiting ships. Faces once trusted now dripped with suspicion. The colony tore itself apart, neighbor against neighbor, friend against friend. Betrayals unfolded one after another, each more shocking than the last. And at the center of it all, the girl sat in silence, her power flickering uncontrolled, sparks jumping from her skin as though the fire within knew the truth before she did. The enemy was already inside. That night, they came for her, not with alien ships or thunderous demands, but with the faces she had known since childhood. A woman who had once held her as a baby, two men who had taught her to fish, a boy who had once sworn to protect her. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, an inhuman shimmer betraying their true nature. They moved without sound, their bodies too graceful, too precise. She froze as they entered her hut, her throat tight with betrayal that cut deeper than any blade. "You were never theirs," one whispered, his voice smooth, calm. "You are always ours. Come quietly. It will be easier." But the fire inside her refused. Sparks leapt from her hands, igniting the walls, turning wood to ash before it could collapse. The traitors recoiled, their human disguises flickering, revealing gray skin beneath. The girl ran, barefoot across the frozen ground, the night air slicing her lungs. Behind her, the hut burned bright, and though it should have filled her with horror, a strange, fierce joy stirred in her chest. She was not running from the fire. The fire was running with her. The aliens tightened their grip. Their ships drifted lower, casting shadows that swallowed the fields. A new broadcast cut through the colony's air, not a demand but a countdown. 7 days. Deliver the lost ember, or be extinguished. Each word was followed by a pulse from the sky, shaking the ground, rattling bones, as if the very earth counted with them. The colony fractured further. Some fell to their knees, begging the girl to give herself up, swearing they would never forgive her if she doomed them all. Others stood before her hut with weapons in hand, declaring she was humanity's last chance, their only weapon. The air itself trembled with rage, fear, and desperate hope. She looked at them, her chest heavy, and wondered which was worse, to be seen as a savior or as a sacrifice. The fire's voice returned each night, stronger now, the woman's tone fierce and unyielding. "You are not theirs to claim. You are not theirs to kill. You are flame, child. Flame does not kneel. Flame does not surrender. It consumes, it reshapes, it endures." The girl pressed her palms against her ears, tears streaking her face. "But I don't know how," she whispered. "I don't know what I'm meant to do." The flame answered with silence. Then, softer than before, it gave her words that chilled her blood. "You are meant to burn the truth from the lies. And the first lie is already beside you." She turned her head slowly. In the shadows of her hut, a figure she had thought loyal stepped forward, knife gleaming in his hand, eyes shining with the cold light of betrayal. The colony was tearing itself apart. Houses smoldered from torch-lit riots. Voices rose in screams and shouts, and the air carried both prayer and curses. The girl stood in the center of it all, her skin shimmering faintly, the glow beneath her flesh pulsing like embers waiting for air. She had tried to hide, to shrink into the corner of her world, but the fire would not let her. It burned quietly within her chest, growing stronger with each passing night, whispering truths too heavy for her young shoulders to bear. Then came the dreams, not her own, but memories buried deep, echoing across generations. She saw white-walled laboratories on Earth, scientists working in secret, their faces gaunt with sleepless resolve. Alien fire contained in glass, burning without fuel, licking the air like a living creature. She saw the first human volunteers step into the light and crumble into ash, their sacrifice noted coldly on tablets. And then she saw the breakthrough, a child born with cells that shimmered faintly, capable of withstanding the fire's touch. That child had been hidden, her bloodline guarded, scattered across colonies so the secret would never die. The girl awoke trembling, her throat dry, but the voice in the flame confirmed it. You are the bearer of their legacy. The fire does not kill you because it belongs to you. It was written into your blood before you took your first breath. The realization left her dizzy. The aliens had ruled for centuries because of this fire, their sacred flame that bent worlds into submission. They believed only their kind could wield it, and humans had cowered beneath its heat. But her existence proved otherwise. She was living proof of humanity's defiance, a spark born of forbidden science, carrying the one thing the overlords feared most, a fire they could not control. The more she walked among her people, the more the power revealed itself. When she touched a broken irrigation pipe, the metal twisted back into shape as if obeying her. When she laid her palm on a wounded man's chest, the blood stopped flowing and his breath steadied. But it wasn't only healing. Sometimes when her anger rose, flames crackled from her skin, searing whatever stood too close. Children whispered that she was holy. Elders warned she was dangerous. Both were right. The aliens knew it too. Their ships hovered lower now, their silhouettes blotting out the stars, their voices rumbling across the colony with mechanical precision. Deliver the lost ember. 7 suns remain. Fail, and this world burns. Each message was sharper, louder, as if they sensed her fire growing stronger. Inside the colony, chaos deepened. Some colonists formed guards around her hut, vowing to defend her at any cost. Others demanded she be chained and surrendered before it was too late. Old friends turned into enemies overnight. And through it all, the girl stood at the center, torn between terror and awakening, her power crackling like a storm she could not stop. That was when the second betrayal came. It was not from strangers or neighbors. It was from someone close, someone she trusted more than anyone left alive. He had been the first to comfort her when the fire spared her life, the one who swore he would never let her fall into alien hands. His presence had been her anchor through whispers and suspicion. She clung to him as the riots swelled, believing his promises even when others' loyalty faltered. But fear corrodes faster than flame. He saw the alien ships, heard the countdown in his bones, and one night his resolve snapped. He whispered to himself that it was the only way, that saving one girl could not outweigh the survival of an entire colony. So when she awoke to find him at her side, guiding her away from the fires of the settlement, she followed without question. He told her there was a safe place, that the council had found a way to protect her. She believed him because she needed to believe someone. The walk through the forest was quiet, the air heavy with smoke and ash. Her feet brushed against dry leaves, sparks dancing with every step. You're trembling, she whispered, looking up at him. He forced a smile, but his eyes were hollow. It's nothing, he said. We're almost there. And then she saw them, tall figures waiting among the trees, their gray skin shimmering faintly, their eyes alight with unnatural fire. Alien soldiers cloaked in shadow, their weapons glowing with heat. She stumbled backward, realization crashing into her chest. Her protector's grip tightened painfully around her wrist, dragging her forward even as her heart screamed betrayal. I'm sorry, he breathed, though his voice cracked with more fear than sorrow. This is the only way. They promised they would spare the rest if I gave them you. The aliens stepped closer, their movements deliberate, their faces expressionless masks of victory. The girl's breath came fast, her chest tight with terror, with rage, with heartbreak. The fire inside her screamed against the betrayal, flaring hot enough to sear her skin. Sparks erupted from her body, the leaves around her igniting into flames. The aliens froze, wary, their weapons rising. The voice of the flame roared inside her head, louder than ever before. Do you see now? You're not their prey. You're not their prize. You are the fire they cannot command. Burn, child, burn. She fell to her knees, torn between fear of the power and fear of herself. Her betrayer pulled her harder, shoving her toward the aliens, but fire erupted from her skin in a blinding wave, forcing them to retreat for a heartbeat. The trees cracked and split, glowing red, and the night sky shimmered with heat. But she was overwhelmed, her young body trembling under the force of the power she barely understood. Her betrayer shoved her again, this time into alien hands. She gasped, flames flickering around her fists, but their cold grip closed tight around her arms, searing her with restraints of molten metal. The forest glowed with unnatural firelight as the aliens dragged her toward their ship. Behind them, the colony screamed in chaos. And above, the countdown to annihilation ticked closer to its end. The alien flagship was a cathedral of shadow and fire. The walls pulsed with veins of molten light, the very architecture alive, feeding on energy drawn from the star's heart. The girl's breath echoed against the chamber's vastness as she was dragged forward, her wrists bound by bands that burned with cold flame. She could hear the thrum of the ship all around her, steady and ominous, like the slow beating of a giant heart. The aliens stood in silent rows, their pale eyes reflecting the fire that radiated from her. At the center of the chamber, raised upon a dais of obsidian glass, sat their High Sovereign. His voice slithered into her mind before his mouth even moved. Lost Ember, you were never theirs. You are ours, the ember we forged, the spark that betrayed us long ago. Now you will burn for eternity, kept alive as the flame that never dies. Her body trembled, not from the restraints, but from the weight of the choice pressing against her chest. The fire within surged like a storm, demanding release. And yet, beneath the fury, there was fear of what would happen if she let go completely. Would she scorch her people along with their enemies? Would she become nothing but ash scattered on the void? The sovereign leaned forward, his voice heavy with command. Surrender, child, and your colony will live. Resist, and they will perish in the cleansing fire. His words were poison, but the images they carried, the screams of her people, the ruin of her home, stabbed deeper than any blade. The restraints cut into her skin, the heat blistering, but the fire inside refused to cower. And then the voice returned, the one that had whispered to her since the flames first spared her life. It was not alien. It was not machine. It was human, raw and unyielding. You were never meant to kneel. You were meant to burn, but not to die. Burn for them, not for me. Burn for every voice silenced by their fire. Her head rose slowly, eyes locking with the sovereign's. The glow within her deepened, shifting from faint embers to molten gold, searing through the restraints until they dripped like wax. The alien stepped back uneasily, their confidence faltering. The girl's voice cut through the chamber, sharp and defiant. You don't own me. You don't own humanity. The fire was never yours. The sovereign roared in fury, his body erupting with streams of flame. Alien soldiers rushed forward, weapons glowing white-hot. But it was too late. The girl closed her eyes and let go. The fire inside her burst outward in a torrent of light and heat, a tidal wave that consumed the chamber in an instant. The obsidian walls cracked and shattered, molten rivers pouring down. The soldiers vanished in sparks, their screams silenced before they could finish. The sovereign staggered, his form unraveling as the very fire he claimed to command tore through him like paper in a storm. The flagship groaned, its hull splitting apart as the flames spread, leaping from one deck to another, racing through the corridors like living firehounds unleashed from their cage. Outside, The alien fleet swarmed in panic as the flagship burned from within, its power core unraveling into chaos. For a heartbeat, the girl felt herself dissolving, her body nothing but light, her mind stretched thin across the void. She saw everything at once: her colony, the stars, the fleet crumbling into dust. She thought this was death, a final blaze before eternal dark. But then the fire shifted. It wrapped around her like a cocoon, reshaping her, tempering her instead of consuming her. The pain eased, replaced by something new, strength that pulsed with every beat of her heart. When the light dimmed, she was standing at the center of the ruined chamber, her skin unburned, her hair flowing like threads of flame, and her eyes glowing with endless fire. The restraints were gone. The sovereign was ash, and beyond the shattered hull, the alien fleet was no more, reduced to drifting embers in the void. Silence fell. The battlefield was nothing but wreckage, the stars peering coldly through torn metal. In that silence, a single thought echoed across the surviving colony ships. She had done it. A child meant to be consumed had instead consumed her enemies. Humanity was alive because she chose to burn. But as the colonists whispered her name, a shadow of doubt threaded through their awe. The way she stood among the ashes, the fire that licked her skin without consuming her, the unearthly glow in her eyes. She was no longer entirely one of them. She was something more, something born of humanity and fire, a bridge between what they had been and what they could become. She stepped through the broken hull and looked down at her world. Smoke rose from the colony, but it still stood. Her people were alive. For now, they were safe. She raised her hand, fire curling from her palm, not wild but steady, a controlled flame waiting to be shaped. The voice of the flame whispered one last time, softer now, fading. "This is yours now. Carry it well. Burn not to be consumed, but to light the path ahead." The girl stood among the ruins, no longer trembling, no longer unsure. The fire had not destroyed her. It had remade her. Humanity's future blazed in her hands, and though whispers spread that she was no longer human, one truth was undeniable. She was theirs, and she was the first of something new. The ashes settled. The stars gleamed quietly. And there, in the heart of silence, the girl turned her face to the horizon and stepped forward, her burning eyes holding the promise of dawn. Fire that closes the story with a dramatic HFY payoff. She chooses defiance, saves humanity, and evolves beyond human limits, leaving a haunting but hopeful ending.